Okay, you know when you're watching a film and your brain suddenly goes, that shouldn't happen. Park it. No, seriously, park it. Because if you're going to watch The End of Oak Street, that is exactly what you need to do. This film is ridiculous. There are moments where every logical part of your brain wants to start asking questions. How did that happen? Why would they do that? Surely that doesn't make any sense. Stop. You're going to ruin it for yourself. Because if you can just accept the fact that The End of Oak Street operates in a world where normal rules occasionally appear to have taken the afternoon off, it is great fun. It's chaotic, exciting, funny, surprisingly suspenseful, and actually I think this is a really good family film to watch with kids around 11 plus. And yes, I can already hear some of you say, but it's ridiculous. I know. That's sort of the point, because the film actually starts in a much quieter place. At first, it almost reminded me of a sitcom. You've got this picture perfect suburbia. Nice houses, nice street, families going about their everyday lives. Everything looks comfortable and safe. And meanwhile, as the audience, we know something is coming. So you're sitting there waiting and waiting, because eventually we know what we're going to see. Well, you know. And I thought David Robert Mitchell handled the opening really well. There are these longer shots where nothing necessarily happens, but you're searching the screen anyway. You're looking into the background. You're waiting for something to move, something to appear, something to tell you that this extremely ordinary suburban world is about to become very unordinary indeed. And that slightly eerie atmosphere gives the film a genuine sense of suspense before it really starts throwing everything at you. There's also something very familiar about the whole setup. I kept thinking about the Spielberg and Amblin films that a lot of us grew up with. E.T., The Goonies, that whole era where ordinary suburbia could suddenly become the setting for this enormous adventure. Kids, families, neighbours, normal everyday life. And then something completely extraordinary turns up. There's something about The End of Oak Street that really taps into that. And actually, I'm not sure this sort of film works in quite the same way now without Stranger Things having coming along in the meantime. I don't mean that this story is like Stranger Things, it isn't, but Stranger Things brought that whole tone back into the mainstream. The throwback suburbia, the heightened family dynamics, kids and adults dealing with completely extraordinary circumstances, humour sitting alongside genuine danger. For those of us who grew up with Spielberg and Amblin, it feels nostalgic. For younger audiences, Stranger Things has almost introduced them to the same language. And that probably helps here, because this film asks you to accept quite a lot. Quite a lot. And one of the biggest reasons I was willing to go with it was the family. I thought the performances were really good across the board. Anne Hathaway and Ewan McGregor obviously bring a huge amount of experience, but Maisy, Stella and Convery are just as important, because this only works if you believe them as a family. And I did, because the script repeatedly puts these characters in situations as a viewer where you're obviously having to start to talk to the screen. No, don't do that. Why are you going over there? Stay where you are. There are several points where the sensible decision seems extremely obvious. And then the characters decide, nah, let's try something else. But because the performances are convincing, I could normally understand why they were doing what they were doing. Not necessarily agree, understand. And that's different. And I think that's what stops it becoming frustrating. They don't suddenly turn into action heroes. They still behave like people who are scared, confused, trying to protect each other, making quick decisions and occasionally making very bad ones. Which, if we're being fair, is probably much more realistic than all of us sitting comfortably watching them and thinking, well, obviously I would have handled that dinosaur situation much better. Would you? Really? Because I suspect most of us would be hiding behind a kitchen island somewhere crying. And because you believe the family, the suspense works better. You care when they're in danger. You care when somebody makes a mistake. You care when they're trying to protect each other. And that gives the film something real underneath all the chaos. There's also a subplot that I really enjoyed, even though I could see where it was going. It's one of those where fairly on you think, oh right, well I know what's going to happen with that. This is definitely going to come back and bite him later. Metaphorically and possibly quite literally. So I wouldn't say the film is constantly surprising. There are moments where you know exactly what is being set up, but sometimes that works. You're not always waiting for a twist. Sometimes you're waiting for the payoff. And when you know something is coming, can actually create another kind of suspense. You're sitting there thinking, oh, when is this going to go horribly wrong? And then eventually, yeah, there's that bit. The film also gets the balance between suspense and fun mostly right. It never becomes so dark that you stop enjoying yourself, but the dinosaurs still feel dangerous enough that the action matters. And I was actually really impressed by the dinosaurs. They looked good, they moved convincingly, and the film doesn't always rush to show you everything immediately. Sometimes it's a glimpse or a sound or something moving in the distance, something disappearing. And that works. Then when the film does properly let them loose, it feels earned. Although, goodness me, there are a lot of dinosaurs. I mean, an extraordinary number. For what appears to be a relatively small area, every dinosaur that ever lived seems to have received the same invitation. At some point, I stopped wondering what species was going to turn up next and started wondering whether there was some sort of prehistoric conference happening nearby. T-Rex, yep, you come in. Excellent. Bring everyone. And again, this is where the film tests you, because the logical part of your brain starts going, hang on, how could all of these possibly... No, park it. We discussed this earlier. And actually, by the end of the film, something strange happens. Something stranger happens. You stop questioning it. At the beginning, something unbelievable happens and you think, that doesn't make any sense. Then something else happens. Oh, come on, that can't be true. Then it gets slightly more ridiculous. Really? Then further and then further on still. Seriously? And eventually you just surrender. By the final act, the film can throw something completely absurd at you. And instead of objecting, you just go, oh, okay, yeah, fine. And I think that's when you realise the film has won you over. You've accepted the rules, the silly rules. You've accepted the world that we've just lived in. You've accepted the family's decision. You've accepted the fact that this tiny patch of land apparently contains more dinosaurs than Jurassic Park. Fine, I'm in. And that's really the key to whether you're going to enjoy the end of Oak Street. If you want to pull apart every decision, coincidence and bit of logic, you're going to have a very busy evening. But I think you'll be missing the point. Part the logic and just go with it, because this is chaotic, exciting, funny and completely unbelievable. And when I say unbelievable, I don't mean wow, I cannot believe how incredible this is. I mean, well, that's unbelievable. That simply wouldn't happen. But okay. And somehow that becomes part of its charm. The performances keep you invested, the suspense works, and eventually the film just wears down your resistance until you accept the madness. Part the logic, accept the dinosaurs, enjoy yourself. I am giving The End of Oak Street 4 stars. Thank you for watching Movie Shorts. Don't forget to like and subscribe and make a comment. Thank you for all the subscriptions that I've recently received. Until next time, bye bye.